Hi everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. I have so many videos filmed right now that I can't freaking upload because of the strike. So I'm sorry that there wasn't really August uploads. I think I may have had like one book related video that I managed to get up. So today I'm going to be doing my August reading wrap up. One of the books that I read does involve a struck production company, so I will address that and my thoughts on the strike when I get around to talking about that book. So August was a busy month for me, and because of that, my reading was terrible for this month. I only read 5 books. That is terrible. At least for my standards. I know for other people 5 books can be considered a lot, but for me, I'm like, that's way down from what I've been doing these past several months in 2023. My average star rating was 2.8 stars. That is so low. That's so low, and it's because out of the 5 books that I read in the month of August, one of them was 1 star, and that like lowered the rating significantly for my whole reading for the month. So since there's only 5 books, this video might be shorter than my other wrap-ups, and let's just get into it so that I can tell you about the books that I read in August. The first book I read is the book that I read completely on vacation. It went through a lot. I don't know why, but like every time I brought this book out of my suitcase, it somehow got wet. Like at one point I put it on the floor because I was like reading in the bathtub, and then I put it on the floor and the bathtub at the hotel somehow leaked, completely drenched the book. I know I spilled like soda on it. Oh my gosh, this book has been through a lot. So this book is Trail of Lightning, and it is by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is my favorite book that I read this month, and I surprisingly read it for school. Normally when I read school books, I don't really enjoy them very much. So this was the 3rd book that I read for my English class, and it is my favorite one for my English class because, as you will see later in this video, I have now read every book that I need to read for my summer English class, which is American literature after 1865, I believe, and it has a focus on Indigenous literature. So Rebecca Roanhorse is an Indigenous author, and this book features Indigenous characters. Trail of Lightning is a futuristic, post-apocalyptic story with fantasy elements and romance. It follows a monster hunter named Maggie, and in this world, the tribes that you're from cause you to have powers. So Maggie has some powers that aids in her ability to be a monster hunter. She is hired at the start of the book to take care of this monster who has kidnapped a young girl. But after seeing the monster, she realizes this may be something that is much more intense than her normal monster hunting, and this may be connected to other things. So she ends up on this journey to figure out more about this monster and where it came from and who created it. And along the way, a boy named Kai joins her, and Kai is a medicine man. There's also gods and characters from like myths and legends in here. So it is infused with Indigenous mythology, and it is fused with Indigenous representation. I really enjoyed this book. As I said, it's really fast-paced and enjoyable. I do need to warn all of you though that there is a relationship in here that isn't explicitly labeled as grooming, but it very heavily feels like grooming, so it can be triggering to some people. I ended up giving this one 4 stars just because I wasn't the hugest fan of the ending of this book, but everything else about this book was literally perfect. So Trail of Lightning is my favorite book for this month, and I've already bought the 2nd book, and I'm hoping to dive into the 2nd book soon. Then I read an ebook, and I read an e-arc. And the e-arc I read is one that's already come out, but I'm like so behind on my NetGalley list of books. I had to write the name of this one down because it's a long name. It's Never Too Old to Save the World, a Midlife Calling Anthology. So this is a short story anthology, and the concept is that there's people who are older adults, like anywhere from like 30s to like 60s, I would say, and they're all getting their chosen one stories. So I believe there's 19 stories, and it is a bunch of chosen one stories. All the stories have some sort of fantasy or science fiction element to it. So I thought this idea was really interesting, and I've been interested in this concept for a while because there was this Tumblr post that was going around for a while, like, why is it always teens that are getting chosen one stories and getting called to save the world? Why isn't it more like adults who have the life experience and who can make good decisions and stuff like that? So this book I felt like sort of took that idea and ran with it, which I thought was really interesting. And I don't really see older adults in books that I'm reading very often, so I was really interested to see these older adults in there. However, I found most of the stories to be really forgettable, and some of them were just outright terrible. I think there was only one that I gave 5 stars because the way that I like choose my rating for an anthology is I add up all of the star ratings that I gave each individual short story, then I divide it by the number of short stories in there to get the like average star rating, you know? So the average star rating ended up being 3 stars. Well, I believe it was like 2 point something, but it was above 2.5, so I rounded it up to 3. My favorite one and the only short story in there that I gave 5 stars is Once a Queen. Once a Queen is sort of like Narnia, I got that sense. So this would basically be like if the events of the last battle didn't happen, if you know, you know, and then Lucy, when she's an older adult, goes back to Narnia. It would sort of be like that. So it was really fun and nostalgic, that story, but most other stories were not that good. I know I liked A Legacy of Ghosts, and I know I liked the Mommy Incident, but all the other ones I was like, nope, you all are terrible. I think if you're gonna go through this anthology and pick through some that interest you, I think you can get some fun times out of it. But if you're planning on reading every single one in this anthology, you're going to be really disappointed. I don't really recommend this anthology unless there's like a few that you're going to pick out and read. So yeah, it was not for me, but there were a few that I did like in there. And then this next one involves a struck production company. So I just want to clarify, I 100% support the strike. I support writers and actors who are striking for fair wages and striking against the use of AI, which is a major issue, and I have a lot of strong feelings about AI. My videos have been less recently because of the strike, because most of the content that I film and upload has a lot to do with shows and movies that were made by struck production companies. Also, that's the reason why on my TikTok and Instagram I'm mainly posting anime cosplays right now, as opposed to my normal mix of fandoms and happiness. I mean, anime is happy, but do you know what I mean? I have to be cautious about what I'm posting right now because I've always wanted to pursue acting. I never had the chance to pursue acting because of the schools that I went to, and because I always did cross country and track, which always interfered with theater. I mean, granted, I have health issues, so like I probably will never be able to go into acting, but I want to leave the door open just in case my health issues magically get better. Come on, universe, give me a cure for my health issues. Anyways, so this book does have to do with a struck production company, but since I read it this month, I'm going to talk about it, and I am going to link down below the link to the Entertainment Community Fund, I believe is what it's called, which will help writers and actors who are on strike who are currently missing out on wages because they aren't working. Hopefully by the time this video gets uploaded, the strike will be done. I doubt it, but I hope that's the case. So this book is The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. So Carrie Fisher has several memoirs, and this is her last memoir, the one that she wrote before she died. So this book came about because Carrie Fisher found some diaries from the first of the science fiction saga that she's in. Try not to like talk about the movies that much in particular, especially because there is new installments in that series coming out in the midst of a strike. So 100% want to make sure to not promote those on my channel or anything like that until after the strike. So she decided after reading those journals that she was going to write a memoir about her time, and it mainly focuses on the time of the first of the science fiction saga, and specifically it focuses on the affair that she had with Harrison Ford. So I think Carrie Fisher has a great style of writing. I think her writing is really enjoyable. I think she has some really clever things to say. However, I did not want to read a book that's over 200 pages long that mainly just focuses on an affair. And especially because, like, I don't know if she's just like in denial, like what happened to her, but I was like, this is changing my thoughts on Harrison because it comes off really wrong. So slight spoilers here, but if you know anything about their affair, you probably already know this. So she goes into like tons of detail on this. Carrie Fisher's at a party, and these men were trying to get her to drink and get her drunk, and they were gonna take her out and do something to her. She tries to like keep things lighthearted and not go into the seriousness of how like awful that is, but it's extremely awful, and you can imagine what could have happened to her. So Harrison Ford ends up coming in, and he goes, I don't think she knows what she wants. And so he takes Carrie Fisher and he gets her out of there. However, she's still drunk, and he starts making out with her. So he's taking advantage of her, like those men were, but he claimed to be saving her from those men. So I was like, what's going on? And then they obviously have an affair that ensues from there, and Harrison was married with a wife and kids. So I was not happy with Harrison for that. But I mean, Carrie is somewhat to blame for continuing it after being drunk. But at the same time, Harrison had like a power imbalance in the relationship with Carrie because Harrison was much older and had more of a acting career so far. And so I was like, there's a power imbalance here, and the age difference is part of what creates that power imbalance. So yeah, I was really frustrated with that. But it's important for Carrie to have spoken her truth and to have revealed what went down here. That way people know the truth about Harrison and about what went down. Because honestly, it would have sucked if she hadn't written about her affair and then say like after her death, a journalist like leaks information about the affair, or a crew member from the movies. So I'm glad that she spoke her truth. I'm glad that I got it out there. However, I can't say I personally enjoy reading about affairs. So because I like her writing style and her like personality and how it's shown through in her writing, I ended up giving this 3 stars. So, oh my goodness, my makeup is on my finger. I'll talk about that in one sec, why that happened. So yeah, I give this 3 stars. The content of this one wasn't my favorite, but I loved her writing style and her personality. So I think I'll enjoy her other memoirs better, but this one was not the greatest. So I would say that I overall enjoyed it and I thought it was important. I just don't think I loved it as much as I would have hoped to have loved it. Also, rest in peace, Carrie Fisher. So I said I was going to talk about the makeup. So when I went on vacation in July and August, I had an eyeshadow palette with black eyeshadow on it that exploded. And since then, I've been slowly trying to clean out my makeup to get it so that I don't have black eyeshadow in all of my makeup. Like the first day of LeakyCon, no one like commented on it, so it must not have been like as obvious to people, but my makeup sponge was coated in black eyeshadow and I tried to wash it off the best I could, but I was running short on time and I just had to do it, and my face, like specifically over here, looked like I had soot on my face for most of the day. So that was fun. Anyone want to buy me new makeup? Just kidding, don't buy me things unless you feel like it. But even then you don't have to. Okay, so I realized that I did the order wrong when I was talking about my books because I read one before The Princess Diarist and after Never Too Old to Save the World. So I'm sort of doing it out of order today, but I'm also out of sorts right now because my dog was barking last night because she was sad that she was alone, but I also can't have her in my room or else she'll eat all my cat's food. So yeah, I'm currently house sitting. In case that isn't obvious, I don't live alone. It's just I'm house sitting, so Cookie was like, no, you left me alone to sleep on my own. And I was like, girl, I need sleep, so shut the frick up. I love her so much, but shush, please. Anyways, okay, I'm a little out of sorts right now. So the book that I read before The Princess Diarist is the final one that I had to read for my class, and I can't decide if it's my least favorite one that I read for my class or not because 2 of the books I read for my class I gave 1 star. This is Tracks by Louise Erdrich. I really enjoyed my time with The Birch Bark House by Louise Erdrich, and that one I read for a different English class, and that one was like really good, and it was very enjoyable. And so I was expecting this one to be really enjoyable too, but boy, was I disappointed. So this is technically the 3rd book in a series, but you don't have to read them in order because I understood this one without needing to have read the other ones. And my professor only listed the 3rd one in the series on the required reading list, so it's fine to read them out of order, I guess. So Tracks has 2 points of view. The first one is Nana Push, who is a grandfather, and Nana Push is telling his adopted granddaughter about her mom. So he's sharing the story of what happened to his granddaughter's mom and why her mom decided to put her daughter into a boarding school. So there's that storyline. But then there's also another storyline, which is Pauline's point of view. And Pauline is this young girl who, how do I even describe her? She gets caught up in some dark events and she decides to reject her heritage and her culture and instead embrace Catholicism and white culture. So there's 2 very drastically different people, but their stories are interconnected because of this character named Fleur Pillager. So Fleur is Nana Push's adopted daughter, so Nana Push is telling the story of Fleur to the granddaughter. I hope I'm making sense. This book is really detailed and complex, so it's hard to summarize it quickly. So Fleur is this like mysterious and powerful woman, and Pauline worked with Fleur in this city away from the reservation, and Pauline is like jealous of Fleur. Meanwhile, Fleur is just trying to live her life and be happy in the midst of white colonization occurring. So this book is really complex. There's a lot to it. I found that I hated most of the characters. I mean, I shouldn't say most, I should say all. There is not one single character I legitimately like in this book. Even characters that seem like they're good most of the time do terrible things, and it pisses me off to no end. Pauline is the absolute worst, and she like uses this sadomasochistic, I don't know how to say that word, version of Catholicism where she's like torturing herself essentially because she thinks it's what she needs to do to be a good Catholic girly. Oh my gosh, okay. Yeah, I didn't like this one. It's also really incredibly boring. And there's really long passages of like metaphors, so if you're not that good with metaphors, it will seem like you're reading a fantasy book in sections, but it's not a fantasy book, it's a historical fiction book. So I gave this one 1 star. I despise it, and I have started working on my final essay for my class. Haven't finished yet, but as soon as my professor grades my final essay, this book is going bye-bye. I never want to see this book again in my life. That's how much I hate it. And then the final book that I read this month was my book from Kindle Unlimited for the month. I chose Your Echo, which is the second book in the Sherbrooke Station series, which is by Katia Rose. The Sherbrooke Station series is a series of romance novels that can be read individually on their own. So like they're connected, but you don't have to read them together to understand them. So Your Echo follows Ace, who is a character that you met from the first book, and he is the lead guitarist and singer in the Sherbrooke Station band. Now, he has a problem with alcoholism, and he ends up needing to get his alcoholism under control in order for their band to stay together and continue. So he ends up getting private meditation sessions from this gal who volunteers at a meditation center. So I didn't like Ace as a character. I know that he was struggling with alcoholism, but there were some things that he said that he shouldn't have been able to come back from. Like the fact that he was racist against one of his friends. I was like, how can you just come back from that? Like, you can't. You can't come back from the fact that you made a racist remark about your friend. And then also I don't like meditation very much. That part was a little bit annoying to me. However, the rest of the book was awesome. I love Katia Rose's style of writing, and I love the pacing of her stories. Stephanie, which has an accent, so they're like Stephanie? I don't know. It's supposed to be like pronounced with a French accent. I don't know how to do that, so I'm just gonna say Stephanie. So Stephanie, I really liked her. She was really passionate and fierce and commanding, and she's just incredible, and I love her so much. And that is Katia's biggest strength in her books, the way that she can write such strong female characters. I also really appreciated what the book did with Stephanie's mom. So Stephanie's mom is in a wheelchair, and she had an accident at work, and the book addresses what it's like to live with a physical disability, and it addresses how the system sort of screws disabled people over, which is something I'm very passionate about because I'm disabled, in case you don't know. Another thing that I thought was really cool about this book is it was enjoyable for me, but it was also educational. I had no clue about what it was like to be a French person or a French-speaking Canadian in Canada. I had no clue about the levels of harassment that they face because they are French and because they're French speaking. Like, obviously I knew that there was people who speak French in Canada, but I didn't know the lengths of the harassment that they face. So I thought it was really cool that this book highlighted that. So I did enjoy this book. I just think that Meditation Ace really hindered from my enjoyment of the book. So like, it could have been a 4 or 5 star if it wasn't about meditation and if Ace had an entirely different personality and wasn't a terrible person. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I have really mixed feelings about it, as you can tell, but overall I enjoyed it, and I thought that it was a worthwhile book for me personally. I don't know if I'd say that I like it better or not from the first book in this series. I gave them both 3 stars. Your Echo, the difference between it and the first book for me, like in terms of the emotional impact it had on me, is that Your Echo is so much deeper and tackles much deeper topics, and Your Rhythm, like, there was no meditation and the main male character was more likable than Ace in my opinion, but at the same time it felt like very like surface level. Like it didn't take the deep dive into talking about super intense and worthwhile subjects. I mean, it did talk about worthwhile subjects, but you know, like life-changing subjects, important subjects to raise awareness for. Well, Your Echo did that. So they're sort of like tied for me, Your Echo and Your Rhythm. Your Rhythm is the first book in the series. There's 2 more books in the series, so I'm curious to see how that will turn out. So yeah, that was all for today's video. I actually talked longer than I thought I would, especially considering I only read 5 freaking books this month. As I said earlier in the video, the Entertainment Community Fund will be linked down in the description below. Feel free to donate if you have the means to do that and if you want to support the strike. I hope all of you had a great August, and I hope your fall is fantastic. I know fall has a lot of mixed feelings for people because we get Thanksgiving, we get Halloween, which is super fun, but then also we get back to school, or if you work in a job that takes the summer off, you're going back to work. So I know that's not necessarily the funnest thing in the world, but I still hope you have a great fall. Hopefully I'll have some more videos coming soon. It just depends on what goes on with the strike and if I can find time to film videos that involve stuff that don't involve struck production companies. So yeah, I will see you in my next video. At the bare minimum, you will see me for my September reading wrap up, but hopefully you will see me much sooner than that. Anyways, until next time, everyone, goodbye.